Thank you for subscribing. I want you to look at your own life for a second and just imagine it as this impossibly complex, like thousands of pieces jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, yeah. That is a feeling we all know.
Right. We've all experienced that deeply frustrating psychological state. You're sitting at the table and all these jagged little pieces of your life are just spread out in front of you.
Your career, your relationships, health, bank account, all of it.
Exactly. All of it. And sometimes out of pure exhaustion, we just try to jam pieces together that clearly do not fit.
We really do.
We force a bad job to align with our lifestyle, or we try to wedge a totally toxic relationship into our vision of happiness. But the deeper issue, the real source of the anxiety, is that we feel like we are completely missing the box cover.
Yes. That overarching reference image.
We have no idea what the final picture is actually supposed to look like, so we just guess.
Yeah.
We connect a piece here, a piece there, hoping the chaos eventually forms something recognizable before time runs out.
It's a pervasive modern condition. And it's honestly why we see so many people who are objectively busy, yet completely unfulfilled.
Totally.
They have all the pieces on the table, but without that structural framework, that box cover, those pieces don't interlock to build any real momentum. The picture just stays fragmented.
You end up with a high-paying career, but ruined health.
Right. Or great friends, but crushing debt. I mean, the pieces are there, but the design is fundamentally flawed.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is geared entirely around handing you that box cover. We are pulling from a really diverse stack of sources today to extract the ultimate blueprint for designing your reality.
And it is a powerful blueprint.
It really is. We're looking at Jim Rohn's foundational text, The 5 Major Pieces to the Life Puzzle, alongside some transcripts from his private seminars, and a rather rare 1996 interview appendix that gives us some of his most unfiltered thoughts.
Yeah, that appendix is gold.
It is. Now, Jim Rohn wasn't just a guy who stood on a stage and yelled motivational platitudes. He was widely considered a true personal development philosopher. They literally called him the mentor of masters.
Because the people who dominate the industry today, your Tony Robbins, your Brian Tracy's, they point directly to Rohn as the guy who handed them the architectural schematics for human behavior.
Architectural schematics, I love that. That captures his approach perfectly. So our mission today is to deconstruct Rohn's 5 sequential pieces, which are philosophy, attitude, activity, results, and lifestyle.
We're going to look at the psychological mechanisms behind every single one.
Right, so you can stop leaving your reality to chance. But we really need to establish the ground rules for this framework right away.
Oh, absolutely. This is crucial.
If you are looking for a behavioral shortcut, a get-rich-quick scheme, or some passive manifestation technique where you just, think good thoughts and a Ferrari suddenly appears in your driveway, this material is going to severely disappoint you.
Oh, completely. It will make you miserable if you want a shortcut. Let's unpack this right from the start. Rohn was actively hostile to the idea of fast, effortless success.
Hostile is the right word.
The framework we are exploring today requires deep, structural shifts in your baseline habits. It is highly, highly demanding.
It demands a mastery of the fundamentals. And what's fascinating about Rohn is his insistence that there are no new fundamentals.
Right. Truth is ancient.
Exactly. The principles that built a successful life in ancient Rome are the exact same principles that build a successful life today in a digital economy.
We just tend to neglect them because human nature craves novelty. I mean, we get bored with the basics because the basics are, well, mundane.
We want the hidden elevator to the penthouse, right?
Always do.
But Rohn is telling you that you have to take the stairs and you have to sweep every single step on your way up.
I like that. Sweeping every step.
But to truly grasp the weight of these 5 pieces, we need to understand the crucible that forged them. Let's look at Rohn's own genesis of change, because he wasn't born with this pristine clarity.
Right, not at all.
His origin story starts in a farming community in Idaho. It's a hardworking environment, but there is 0 generational wealth.
Just dirt and hard work.
Right. He goes to college, but he drops out after just 1 year. He actually later joked that he dropped out because he was smart enough to know it's better to get a job.
Which is funny, but also so indicative of that era's mindset.
Totally. So he follows the conventional script. He gets a job. And by the time he's 25 years old, he's working as a stock clerk for Sears. He's married, he's buried in consumer debt, and he is functionally broke.
He is the living embodiment of a guy staring at puzzle pieces that absolutely refuse to fit together.
Yes. He's trapped in the kind of invisible stagnation that traps most people. He wasn't destitute, but he was slowly suffocating under the weight of mediocrity.
And then he encounters his catalyst,
Turning point.
right? He meets a man named John Earl Schoaf, who becomes his mentor. Schoaf introduces Rohn to a single concept that fundamentally shatters his worldview. Schoaf just tells him, profits are better than wages.
You know, on the surface, that just sounds like standard, maybe slightly trite financial advice, like buy low, sell high.
Yeah, it sounds like a bumper sticker.
But looking through the sources, the way Ron describes that moment, it wasn't about accounting. It was an existential shift.
It was a cognitive earthquake.
Yeah.
Schoaf was introducing Rohn to the difference between linear time trading and scalable value creation.
Which is huge.
It changes everything. A wage means you are just renting out your hours. Your earning capacity is literally capped by the rotation of the earth. Right, you only have 24 hours to sell.
You literally cannot work 25 hours a day.
Exactly. But profit. Profit is tied to the value of the solution you provide, independent of time.
That single philosophical shift completely rewired how Ron viewed his own potential, didn't it?
Completely. The implementation of that idea was so radical that by the time Jim Rohn was 31, so just 6 years after being a broke stock clerk at Sears, he was a millionaire.
6 years. I mean, that timeline is just staggering when you consider the starting point.
It really is.
But Ron makes a crucial observation about his own transformation here. He argues that this kind of radical structural life change doesn't happen just because someone gives you a clever piece of advice. Good advice is cheap.
It is everywhere.
He believed that true behavioral change only stems from one of two very distinct, highly visceral emotional states, and those are inspiration or desperation.
Let's examine the psychology of those two states because it's brilliant. Inspiration is the one we all want, right? It's that sudden, beautiful clarity.
Light bulb moment.
Yes. You read a biography, you hear a symphony, or you meet a mentor like Schoaf, and your vision of what is possible just expands instantly. It pulls you forward toward a newly discovered ideal.
Right, but Ron is incredibly pragmatic here.
He is. He points out that desperation, and more specifically, the emotion of disgust, is often a far more potent, immediate driver of change.
Disgust gets such a bad rap in modern psychology.
Oh, we are terrified of it.
We really are. We're taught to avoid it, to soothe it, to reframe it. But Ron treats disgust as this profoundly positive, disruptive force.
It's the ultimate wake-up call.
It's that visceral moment where you look at your credit card statement, or you look in the mirror, or you look at the way you've been treating your spouse, and you literally hit the table and say, I have had enough. I refuse to live another day in this condition.
It acts as an emotional severance. When you are merely annoyed by your circumstances, you tolerate them.
Yeah, annoyance is livable.
Exactly. But when you're disgusted by them, complacency dies instantly, loss aversion kicks in. You are no longer moving toward a goal. You are fleeing a burning building.
I think about it like navigating a massive ship. So you're the captain in the wheelhouse. You alter your course for one of two reasons. Either you look through your telescope and you see this stunning, sun-drenched, uncharted island on the horizon.
Inspiration.
Right, you steer toward the beauty. Or you wander down into the lower decks, you notice a massive gaping hole in your hull, and you realize the freezing ocean is pouring in and you're sinking.
Desperation.
Both forces will make you violently spin the wheel.
And the sinking ship scenario usually bypasses the debate committee in your brain.
You know.
You don't take a poll.
No. You don't sit down and write a pros and cons list about whether you should patch the hole. You just act.
But whether the initial spark is the beautiful island or the sinking ship, the realization you arrive at is exactly the same. It leads directly to Ron's core thesis, which is really the foundational rule for this entire deep dive.
The big rule.
He states, we don't get what we want in life, we get what we are. If you want to have more, you have to become more.
We get what we are. I have to be honest, reading that in the source material, it feels like a punch to the gut.
It's very confronting.
Because everyone wants a better puzzle, everyone wants to be financially secure, everyone wants deep relationships, everyone wants vibrant health. But wishing doesn't change the pieces on the table?
No. The universe doesn't care about your desires.
It doesn't. The universe responds to identity and output. If you want a different picture, you have to literally upgrade the cognitive machinery of the person putting the puzzle together.
It completely removes external circumstances as an excuse. And that upgrading process begins with the very first piece of the puzzle. The absolute cornerstone of Ron's entire framework is piece one, which is philosophy.
Philosophy. Now, Ron describes philosophy as the sail, not the wind. I really want to linger on that metaphor because it perfectly isolates what we can and cannot control.
It's a great distinction.
The wind blows on all of us. The economy crashes, a pandemic hits, a competitor steals your client, or hey, maybe you get a sudden windfall or a lucky break. The wind is just circumstance.
It's entirely agnostic to your goals.
Right. You cannot bargain with the wind. But your philosophy is how you set your sail.
The wind dictates the weather, but the sail dictates the destination. If two boats are on the exact same water, experiencing the exact same gale force wind, one might be driven onto the rocks and completely destroyed, while the other uses that exact same kinetic energy to reach the harbor.
The only variable is the angle of the sail.
Exactly. So how does Rohn define philosophy in a practical sense? He strips away all the academic pretension. It's not about sitting in a toga pondering existence.
No Socrates here.
Right. Philosophy is simply the sum total of what you know and, crucially, how you process that knowledge.
He uses this brilliant industrial analogy. He says you should view the human mind as a manufacturing factory. The factory takes in raw materials from the outside world, information, conversations, media experiences, and it manufactures your reality.
It manufactures your decisions.
So if we think about this like a supply chain, your eyes and your ears are the procurement department.
That is a very sharp way to look at it. Because if your procurement department is buying cheap, rusted, toxic steel,
It's going to fall apart.
yeah. If you are constantly consuming cynical news, reality television drama, and the endless complaints of your coworkers, your assembly line literally cannot manufacture a bulletproof, resilient mindset.
The raw materials just do not possess the structural integrity to build success.
The output will inevitably be a cynical, stagnant reality.
I can hear someone pushing back on this, though. So to fix the mental factory, do I just need to read a bunch of hyper-positive self-help books, ignore the news, and stick my head in the sand? Just drown out the negative with forced positivity?
I see why you draw that conclusion, but no. That is a massive misreading of Ron's intent. He was not an advocate for toxic positivity or delusion.
Okay, good.
Delusion is a terrible raw material. He meant gathering accurate, high-quality data, even if it is uncomfortable or challenging. It's about consuming materials that demand critical thinking.
Which is why he places such an enormous, uncompromising emphasis on actively gathering knowledge. He insists you must be a deliberate student of life through rigorous reading, schooling, and observing.
The reading aspect is completely non-negotiable for him. He has that legendary line where he mocks people who complain about the cost of a hardcover book.
Oh, I love this part.
Oh, $30 for a book, I can't afford that.
Hmm.
Ron flips the entire economic equation. He says the cost of the book is irrelevant. The cost of not reading the book is what will bankrupt you.
The ignorance is what's truly expensive.
Exactly. Losing a decade of your life to a bad financial strategy because you wouldn't spend $30 in 4 hours reading a book on economics that is a catastrophic expense.
Ignorance compounds just like interest.
But gathering the information is only the procurement phase, right? You still have to process it on the factory floor.
Right.
And to do that, Ron advocates for a highly specific, tactile tool to refine your philosophy, the daily journal. He views keeping a journal not as a quaint hobby, but as the primary laboratory for any serious student of life.
Okay, we really need to dig into the mechanics of this because my immediate reaction to the word journal is like a middle school diary.
Dear Diary.
Exactly. Dear Diary, today it rained, traffic was awful, and my boss was completely unreasonable during the marketing meeting. I felt sad. How does writing down a play-by-play of a mediocre Tuesday alter my life puzzle? It just feels like a passive recording of misery.
The diary format you just described is exactly what Ron warns against. That is just rumination. It's an emotional dumping ground. For Ron, a journal is a filtration system.
A filtration system. Okay, expand on that.
It is where you convert episodic memory, which is just a chronological list of what happened, into semantic memory, which is the extraction of meaning and principles.
Ah, so you're finding the lesson.
Right. You don't just write down that your boss was unreasonable. You use the page to forensically analyze the interaction. Why did it escalate? What was your body language? What specific phrasing triggered their defensive reaction?
You're interrogating the event.
Yes. What principle of human communication can you extract from this failure so that you never repeat it?
So you are taking raw, chaotic events and actively distilling them into transferable wisdom. You are building mental models.
You're upgrading the software of your mental factory. And the source material highlights a really striking historical anecdote Rohn uses to illustrate the difference between passive consumption and active documentation.
The JFK story.
Yes, when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, it was an unprecedented psychological shock to the global system. Ron notes that while the vast majority of the country sat in stunned, passive silence in front of their televisions, allowing the raw trauma of the event to just wash over them.
Which is totally understandable.
Of course. But serious historians, thinkers, and writers reacted differently. They immediately went to their journals and their typewriters.
They didn't just feel the event, they interrogated it. They started recording the immediate cultural shifts, analyzing the geopolitical ripple effects, documenting the fragility of power. They were processing reality actively.
Because serious people understand that memory is highly fallible. The brain overwrites details based on your current emotional state. But a written analysis is anchored.
If you don't capture an insight when it strikes you, it evaporates.
Your overarching philosophy isn't granted to you in one mystical vision. It is built brick by brick, page by page, through those captured, examined insights.
So piece one is philosophy. You upgrade the procurement department. You refine the factory floor through journaling. You set the sail. Now here's where the causality really kicks in.
This is the scary part.
It is. Once your philosophy is calibrated, it becomes the lens through which you view every single micro-decision in your day. Which brings us to piece two, and arguably the most chilling concept in Ron's entire framework, the invisible formulas of success and failure.
Chilling is the exact right word. Because these formulas systematically strip away every comforting excuse we use to justify our current position in life. Ron completely dismantles the dramatic Hollywood myths we hold about how failure actually happens.
Right. Society conditions us to view failure as a sudden, catastrophic event, a massive explosion.
Boom, you're ruined.
Exactly. We think failure is a sudden bankruptcy, a sudden heart attack, a sudden divorce out of nowhere. We are always scanning the horizon for the massive asteroid that's going to ruin our lives.
But Ron posits that failure is entirely mundane. The formula for failure is terrifyingly simple. It is just a few errors in judgment repeated every day.
A few errors in judgment, repeated every day. It's so quiet, there's no explosion.
Not at all.
And Ron uses this brilliant, elemental example to explain the psychology behind it. The apple versus the candy bar.
Such a classic example.
Let's look at the mechanism of this choice. You are hungry in the afternoon. You have two options sitting on your desk, a fresh apple and a highly processed chocolate candy bar. You know the apple is better for you, but you choose the candy bar.
That happens all the time.
Now, what is the immediate biological consequence of that error in judgment? Do you wake up the next morning with severe arterial blockage? Do your teeth instantly rot out of your skull?
Nothing happens. The immediate consequences are entirely invisible to the naked eye. And this exposes a profound vulnerability in human neurobiology.
How so?
We operate on a system of temporal discounting. Our brains evolved in an environment where immediate survival was the only priority. The brain heavily rewards immediate caloric intake and heavily discounts consequences that are decades away.
So we are literally fighting evolutionary hardwiring when we reach for the apple.
We are. But the true danger is the false positive of Badal. The brain registers after you eat the candy bar, you eat it, you wake up fine. The brain's threat detection system says, see, no alarm. The data indicates we survived. This was a safe action.
Wow, so the delay is the trap.
The disaster is delayed, so the brain assumes you got away with it. And because it feels safe, you repeat the error. You repeat it the next day and the next week.
If you ate a candy bar and instantly dropped to the floor, clutching your chest with a mild heart attack, the behavioral loop would be instantly shattered. You would never touch chocolate again.
The instantaneous feedback would cure the habit immediately.
But because the feedback loop takes 20 years to close, the compounding effect silently builds the catastrophe.
Silently and inevitably.
I love visualizing this through the lens of micronavigation on a transcontinental flight. Imagine you are piloting a commercial jet from Los Angeles to New York. You are sitting on the runway at LAX. If you bump the navigation dial and knock the plane's trajectory off course by just 1 single degree, what happens when you take off?
Nothing you can feel.
Right. You don't feel the plane violently shake. The seatbelt sign doesn't flash. The alarms don't sound. There is zero environmental feedback telling you that a massive error has occurred. You are just cruising at 30,000 feet, drinking your coffee, completely oblivious to the danger.
And for the first hour of the flight, you are still practically over the exact same terrain as the correct flight path. The divergence is microscopic.
Exactly. But distance and time are the amplifiers. As the hours compound, that 1 degree of error creates a massive geometric divergence. By the time the flight timeline ends, you aren't landing at JFK in New York.
You're in trouble.
You are landing in the freezing waters of the Atlantic Ocean, or you are touching down in a different country entirely. A tiny, comfortable, invisible error at the beginning creates a radically different, catastrophic destination at the end.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism. And the inverse of this psychological trap is the formula for success. It isn't about making one Herculean heroic effort that exhausts you.
No giant leaps.
Right. Success, according to Rohn, is simply a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Reading 10 pages of a challenging book, saving a small percentage of your income, eating the apple. Again, the positive results are entirely invisible on day one.
Right. You don't read 10 pages of a philosophy book and wake up the next morning with a genius-level IQ. You don't save $10 and suddenly feel wealthy.
The lack of immediate positive feedback is just as discouraging as the lack of immediate negative feedback.
Which is why relying on motivation is a fool's errand. Motivation requires a dopamine spike. Rohn is talking about daily discipline, which operates totally independently of dopamine.
It's trusting the math of the compounding effect over the neurochemistry of the moment. The macro picture of your life puzzle is entirely determined by the micro choices you make at 2:0 p.m. on a random Tuesday.
So we have established the mental framework. Piece 1, philosophy, dictates the logic of our choices. But we all know people who have pristine logic and terrible lives. Knowing what to do just isn't enough.
It never is.
I can logically know that I need to save money, but still feel an overwhelming emotional compulsion to spend it. The logic doesn't automatically trigger the action. Rohn recognizes this gap, which brings us to the emotional and physical engines of his blueprint.
Philosophy shapes how we think. But piece 2 of the puzzle is attitude, which is how we feel about those thoughts.
Yeah.
And piece 3 is activity, which is the actual physical labor of manifesting those thoughts into physical reality.
Action.
Exactly. Rohn introduces a concept here that bridges the gap between logic and action. Creation happens twice.
Everything you see around you in the built environment was constructed twice. If you want to build a custom home, it first has to be built in the imagination. That is your attitude, your vision, your emotional belief that the house can exist, the architectural blueprint.
The inner work.
But, and this is where Rohn fundamentally separates himself from the modern manifestation movement. Staring at an empty dirt lot and visualizing a house really hard will not keep the rain off your head.
You're just going to get wet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eventually, the mental creation has to give way to the physical creation. You actually have to pick up a hammer, swing it, and drive the nail into the wood. That is activity.
He is incredibly critical of the danger of talking without doing. He warns against being the type of person who eloquently boasts about their grand plans to build a ladder to the stars, but whose actual daily activity consists of laying 1 brick a month.
It's a huge disconnect.
Your physical output must match the scale of your philosophical ambition. If you have a massive philosophy and a soaring attitude, but your activity level is practically zero, you are not a visionary. You are just hallucinating.
Hallucinating. That's harsh but true. To really drive home how attitude and activity need to merge seamlessly, Rohn introduces a specific behavioral model. He calls it the ant philosophy.
The ant philosophy.
I initially thought it sounded a bit simplistic, but when you break down the 4 psychological components of how an ant operates, it's actually a brilliant blueprint for human resilience.
Let's break it down.
First part. Ants never quit. If an ant is marching across your kitchen floor and you put your shoe in front of it, it doesn't freeze. It doesn't look at the shoe, collapse in despair, and start complaining about how unfair the universe is.
It even play the victim.
Right. It immediately seeks a bypass. It goes over the shoe, it goes under it, it goes around. It is instinctively, relentlessly problem-solving.
Resilience is literally hard-coded into their behavior. The obstacle is simply a new variable to navigate, not a reason to stop.
A new variable, I like that.
The second part of the philosophy is where the cognitive framing gets really interesting. Ants think winter all summer.
Let's pause on this because I can hear the objection already. Thinking about winter all summer sounds exhausting. It sounds like you are just cultivating chronic anxiety, constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop instead of enjoying the sunshine. How do you implement this without becoming a paranoid mess?
That is the most common misinterpretation of this concept. People hear think winter and they default to fear. Rohn is not advocating for paranoia. He is advocating for proactive coping.
Proactive coping. Okay.
During the summer, when food is plentiful, the weather is warm, and life is easy, the ant doesn't lay on a beach chair. They are diligently gathering resources. They understand that the current state of ease is temporary.
Summer doesn't last forever.
Never. And when you are prepared, when you have the resources stored up, you actually enjoy the summer more because you aren't plagued by that subconscious lingering dread of the impending cold. Preparation eliminates anxiety. It doesn't cause it.
That makes total sense. The anxiety comes from knowing you aren't ready. Okay, the third part of the ant philosophy is the inverse. They think summer all winter.
This is about hope.
Right. When they are trapped deep underground, the world is frozen solid, and the conditions are harsh. They don't accept the winter as permanent. They maintain a psychological readiness. They remind themselves that the freeze will thaw, and the moment the first warm day hits, they are positioned to burst back out and resume gathering.
They maintain hope through operational readiness in the midst of extreme adversity.
And finally, the fourth part, which is a question of capacity. How much will an ant gather during the summer to prepare for the winter?
All that it possibly can.
All that it possibly can. An ant does not have a quota. It doesn't look at its stockpile and say, well, that's enough to get by. I'm going to clock out early.
Ants don't do quiet quitting.
No, they do not. It maximizes its potential. It operates at the absolute limit of its capacity. Rohn uses this to define what human activity should look like. Relentless problem solving, foresight during periods of ease, unshakable hope during periods of hardship, and a commitment to maximum effort rather than minimum requirements.
But there is a massive external variable that violently impacts our ability to maintain that ant philosophy. You can have the best intentions in the world, but your environment can just drag you down.
The people around you.
Yes. The outline explicitly highlights a vital section from that 1996 interview appendix. Rohn argues that a massive percentage of our attitude and activity is unconsciously dictated by our associations, the people we spend our time with.
Which we never really want to admit.
Right. To manage this, he urges you to ask 3 incredibly uncomfortable, surgical questions about your social circle.
These questions are designed to cut right through the sentimental comfort of familiar relationships. Question 1, who am I around? Question 2, what are they doing to me? And question 3, is that okay?
What are they doing to me? That is the one that really stings. Because we rarely view our friendships as active influences on our behavior. We just think of them as people we hang out with.
Right, they're just my friends.
But Rohn forces you to analyze the transfer of energy. Are they making you more cynical? Are they validating your excuses? Are they making you comfortable with a lower standard of living?
Let's connect this back to the mind as a factory concept from Piece 1. Your associates are the primary vendors supplying the raw materials to your procurement department.
Exactly.
If your inner circle consists of people who constantly complain about the economy, binge-watch mindless entertainment, and engage in petty office drama, they are backing up a dump truck of toxic waste and unloading it directly onto your factory floor.
And you cannot produce a soaring attitude or disciplined activity if your raw materials are garbage. The math doesn't work.
I want to pause the analysis for a second and ask you, the listener, to look at your own puzzle. Think about the 5 people you text the most, the people you get lunch with, the people whose opinions you actually care about. Are they pushing you to read, to grow, to execute? Or, going back to our earlier example, are they subtly validating your daily errors in judgment?
Are they handing you the candy bar?
Are they the ones saying, oh, come on, 1 candy bar won't kill you, skip the gym, let's go get drinks. Your boss is a joke anyway, it's not your fault you missed the deadline. Because Rohn advises that if the answer to that third question, is that okay, is no, you have to take drastic action. He suggests actively disassociating from people who are poisoning your philosophy.
It sounds ruthless. It honestly borders on antisocial. But he frames it as basic self-preservation. Human beings are deeply mimetic creatures. We mirror the behaviors and standards of our tribe.
We can't help it.
Your life puzzle will invariably eventually start to look exactly like the puzzles of the people you sit at the table with. If you want a radically different picture, you have to find a different table.
Okay, let's track the progression here. We have set our sail with Piece 1, philosophy. We've managed our emotional vision with Piece 2, attitude. And we've cranked up our physical output, like the ant with Piece 3, activity.
Right.
If those first 3 pieces constitute the planting season, the diligent work in the dirt, the 4th piece of the puzzle is the autumn harvest. Piece 4 is results. How do we objectively measure if our life puzzle is actually coming together, or if we are just deluding ourselves?
Results are the ultimate unforgiving measurement of human progress. In Ron's philosophical framework, you cannot rely on your intentions to judge the quality of your life.
Intentions mean nothing to the harvest.
Right, intentions are entirely invisible and usually self-serving. And you can't even solely rely on your activity because activity can often just be busy work running on a treadmill and confusing movement with forward progress. Results are the undeniable physical evidence of whether your philosophy, attitude, and activity are actually aligned with reality.
It is the scoreboard. The numbers don't care about your feelings. Ron suggests that you must engage in frequent, unflinching self-evaluations. You have to audit your assets.
Audit is a great word for it.
And he makes it very clear he isn't just talking about a financial balance sheet. You have to audit your health. Go get comprehensive blood work done. Step on the scale. Look at your resting heart rate. That is a tangible result.
The body keeps the score.
Audit your family life. Is your marriage genuinely thriving, or are you just occupying the same house as a roommate? Audit your business. Look at what the harvest actually yielded.
This step requires a level of radical accountability that most people simply cannot stomach. This is where Ron separates the adults from the children in the realm of personal development.
It really is.
Because if autumn arrives and the harvest is poor, if your bank account is overdrawn, if your blood pressure is in the danger zone, if your relationships are fractured, you cannot blame the soil. You cannot blame the seed. You cannot blame the weather, the Federal Reserve, the government, or the algorithm.
You can only change the farmer.
The farmer is the only controllable variable. The external conditions, the wind and the rain, were exactly the same for the farmer 5 miles down the road who just brought in a record-breaking bumper crop. The difference was not the weather. The difference was the daily application of discipline and the quality of the philosophy.
I have to admit, adopting that level of absolute accountability is intensely uncomfortable. It bruises the ego.
Big time.
It is infinitely easier and honestly much more socially acceptable to blame the economy or bad luck for our failures. If my business fails, my ego desperately wants to say, well, the market shifted unpredictably.
It wasn't my fault.
Exactly. Tracing a bad result, a withered harvest, all the way back to my own daily lack of discipline, acknowledging that I am the one who chose the candy bar over the apple 300 days in a row. That is a painful cognitive process.
It is painful because ego defense mechanisms are designed to protect our self-esteem at all costs, even if the cost is the truth.
Even if it bankrupts us.
Right. But this raises a vital psychological question. Why would Ron insist on adopting such a harsh, seemingly unforgiving perspective? It is not because he wants you to walk around consumed by guilt.
No, not at all.
It is actually the most liberating, empowering mental shift you can possibly make. Look at the locus of control. If your bad harvest is truly the result of the economy or the weather or bad luck, then you are a helpless victim. You are a passenger in your own life. You have zero control over your future.
We're just waiting to be rescued.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you are the sole cause of the bad harvest because of your own errors in judgment, then you are also the only entity in the universe with the power to guarantee a good harvest next season. By accepting total, crushing blame, you simultaneously acquire total, absolute power over the outcome.
Wow. If I caused it, I can fix it. The liability is the asset. That shift in locus of control leads to what is probably his most famous quote, a line that I think everyone should literally write in dry erase marker on their bathroom mirror. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better.
A legendary quote.
Don't wish for fewer problems. Wish for more skills. The puzzle of life isn't supposed to get easier. You are supposed to get significantly smarter at putting it together.
Upgrade the farmer, and the harvest takes care of itself.
So let's play this out to its logical conclusion. Let's say you do the work. You master the fundamentals. You meticulously curate your mental factory. You keep the daily journal. You ruthlessly cut the toxic associations. You adopt the relentless activity of the ant. And boom! Autumn arrives, and you reap a massive, beautiful harvest.
You did it.
You secure the health, the wealth, and the relationships. By all standard metrics, the puzzle is practically finished, but there is one final piece, piece 5. And Rohn argues that without this final piece, the entire puzzle, no matter how much wealth you've amassed, is basically worthless.
Worthless.
Piece 5 is lifestyle, which he elegantly defines as the art of living.
This is where Ron's philosophy elevates from simple wealth building into actual wisdom. Because we have all seen people, perhaps we even know them personally, who have completely mastered the first 4 pieces. They possess incredible discipline, they work themselves to the bone, and they amassed massive results. Huge financial wealth, vast real estate holdings.
Sure.
But they are profoundly miserable. They are alienated from their children, they are stressed out of their minds, and they are chronically unhappy. Ron emphasizes a crucial distinction here. Lifestyle is not a dollar amount. You can be incredibly wealthy and have absolutely no style.
Having $1 million in the bank does not mean you know how to actually live. And the sources share this incredibly specific, vivid anecdote Ron uses to illustrate this point regarding tipping at a restaurant.
The tipping anecdote.
Yes. He talks about the etymology of the word tip-P, which is supposedly an acronym for to ensure promptness. Ron points out that a person with money but no lifestyle might grudgingly throw a few crumpled bills on the table at the end of a meal, grumbling about how the water glasses weren't refilled fast enough.
They resent the transaction.
They have the financial resources, but they have no class. They extract no joy from it. But a person who truly understands lifestyle, the art of living, approaches the exact same scenario entirely differently.
The mechanics of how they approach it alter the entire experience. They give the tip up front.
Up front.
Yeah. If the literal goal is to ensure promptness, waiting until the end of the meal makes no logical sense. A person with lifestyle will pull the server aside before they even sit down. They hand them a generous tip, they look them directly in the eye, they smile, and they make it a meaningful human interaction.
It changes the dynamic entirely.
They say, "We are celebrating a special occasion tonight, and I wanted to make sure we are well taken care of." Think about the ripple effect of that action. You instantly elevate the server's entire night, transforming them from a servant into a partner in your experience, and in doing so, you elevate your own evening. That is lifestyle. It's an aesthetic choice about how you maneuver through the world.
I love that concept so much because it shifts the focus from hoarding to experiencing. He uses another example that hits the same note regarding buying a ticket to the symphony.
Oh, the symphony example is beautiful.
A person with no lifestyle, driven entirely by ego, might buy the most expensive box seats in the theater just to be seen by their peers. They want to show off their harvest, but they sit there and sleep through the music.
They possess the asset, but miss the experience.
Exactly. Ron says a person who has cultivated true lifestyle might only be able to afford a ticket in the very back row, the absolute nosebleeds. But they lean forward over the railing, they close their eyes, and they let the complex arrangements of the music wash over their soul. They feel the art.
That's real wealth.
Lifestyle is about the capacity to translate your resources, no matter how large or small, into actual joy.
It is the ultimate synthesis of ambition and appreciation. And this reveals Ron's overarching motive. His stated goal for his students wasn't just to make them rich so they could buy expensive things. His goal was to teach you how to be completely, profoundly happy with what you currently have, while simultaneously pursuing everything you want.
I want to push on that tension because on the surface, that sounds like a psychological paradox. How can you be completely happy with what you have, but still driven to get more?
It seems contradictory.
Usually, human nature dictates that it must be one or the other. You are either content with your lot in life and therefore lack the drive to improve, or you are fiercely ambitious but miserable because you are constantly fixated on the gap between where you are and where you want to be. How does Ron bridge the gap between the relentless, unyielding ambition of the ant philosophy and the deep, present mindfulness required for lifestyle?
It is a delicate, beautiful tension to manage. The bridge between the two is the dual practice of gratitude and growth.
Gratitude and growth.
You are happy with what you have because you recognize the intrinsic value of the present moment. You appreciate the symphony music even from the back row. Your happiness is not contingent on a future acquisition.
Right.
But you are pursuing more not out of a desperate sense of lack or a need to fill a void in your ego, but out of a sheer curiosity to see how far your human potential can stretch. You want to see what kind of harvest you are capable of producing.
Oh.
A life puzzle is a tragedy if it only depicts success but contains no joy. Lifestyle is the aesthetic completion of the puzzle. It is the varnish that seals the pieces together and makes the whole picture shine.
This has been an unbelievable journey through the mechanics of human potential. Let's briefly recap the causal chain of these 5 pieces so we can finally lock down the box cover of this puzzle in our minds.
Good idea.
It all originates with piece 1, your philosophy, the deliberate curation of your mental factory. That philosophy dictates piece 2, your attitude, your emotional blueprint, and vision. That vision provides the fuel for piece 3, your activity, the relentless, disciplined physical work of the ant.
The labor.
That activity eventually yields piece 4, your results, the objective, undeniable harvest. And those results fund and frame piece 5, Your lifestyle, the intentional art of experiencing the joy of the life you have painstakingly built.
They are an inextricably linked chain of cause and effect. You cannot skip a step. You cannot hack your way to a rich lifestyle without the foundational philosophy and the daily activity to support it. The structure will collapse.
So I want to bring this entirely back to you right now, wherever you are. Your life puzzle is no longer a mystery. You are not missing the box cover anymore. You have the blueprint.
You know what it takes.
Whether the picture of your life is beautiful right now or whether it is a chaotic, frustrating mess, it is simply a reflection of your daily disciplines. It is the visible, cumulative result of your invisible micro choices.
Which brings us to the ultimate friction point. Knowledge without immediate application is just intellectual entertainment. It's useless.
Very true.
If you agree with the logic of Ron's philosophy today, but you change absolutely nothing about your behavior tomorrow, you have simply engaged in another compounding error in judgment.
And that is the exact trap we want to help you avoid. So I want to leave you with a final, highly specific, provocative thought to mull over, building on the behavioral psychology we've explored today.
Let's hear it.
If failure and success are truly just a few daily habits compounded over time, I want you to look at the last 24 hours of your life and ask yourself, what is one tiny, seemingly insignificant error in judgment you made today that you need to correct tomorrow?
Just one.
I'm not asking for a massive life overhaul, just
Okay.
1 degree of the dial. Was it choosing the metaphorical candy bar over the apple? Was it skipping the 10 pages of reading because you were tired? Was it allowing a toxic friend to vent to you for an hour, dumping raw sewage onto your mental factory floor?
Find the error.
Identify that single micro error, because if you do not correct that one tiny degree of trajectory, the compounding effect will silently and inevitably drag you far off course. Remember the ant. Winter is always coming. Start adjusting your daily disciplines right now and put your puzzle together exactly the way it was meant to be seen.